distinguished guests, we warmly welcome you to the third General Assembly of the Conference of Speakers and Presidents of African Legislatures, CoSPAL. We recognize the presence of every excellency seated here. We thank you for making the journey here. And we recognize the presence of Right Honorable Alban Sumana Kingsford Bagbin, the Speaker of the Parliament of Ghana, and the Chairman of the Conference of Speakers and President of African Legislators. Thank you, sir. We also recognize the presence of Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila CFR, who is the inaugural Chairman of the Conference of Speakers and President of African Legislatures and the Chief of Staff to the President of Nigeria and the 9th Speaker of the Nigerian House of Representatives. We very warmly recognize the presence of our hosts, the Right Honorable Rachid Talbi El Alamin, the Speaker of the House of Representatives of Morocco. We also very warmly recognize the presence of our other host, Honorable Mohamed Erachid, my apologies for the pronunciation, the President of the House of Councillors of Morocco, represented, very ably represented. Thank you very much, sir. We recognize the presence of every speaker present. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, it is our honor to have you and host you this morning at the third General Assembly of the Conference of Speakers and Presidents of African Legislatures. And as we commence, and to formally open this historic gathering of Africa's parliamentary leaders, I have the distinguished honor to invite Right Honorable Alban Sumana Kingsford Bagbin, the Speaker of the Parliament of Ghana and the Chairman of the Conference of Speakers and Presidents of African Legislatures, to deliver the opening address. Your Excellencies, please let's welcome the Chairman of CoSPAL. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum. Sabah khair.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to warmly welcome all of you and to stand on the protocol that has just been established for want of time and to move straight away to give the opening address. I must say it is with profound honor and a deep sense of continental purpose that I welcome you to the third General Assembly of the Conference of Speakers and Presidents of African Legislatures. We are deeply grateful to the Kingdom of Morocco and the House of Representatives of this historically great nation for their generous hospitality, their impeccable organization, and for providing us with a conducive environment for reflection, dialogue, and collective action around the soul-searching theme, legislative leadership and parliamentary diplomacy in a changing global order. Rabat, a city where history and modern statecraft intertwine seamlessly, is indeed a fitting venue for the discerning dialogue ahead of us. Your Excellencies, before I proceed, allow me to recognize the presence of my predecessor and pioneer chairman of CoSPAL, Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, who believed, and in fact, he has a very unwavering belief in the power of parliamentary cooperation and his tireless efforts laid the foundation for what has now become the distinguished institution called CoSPAL. We were together on 29th November 2025 in Abuja at the graduation ceremony of the Youth Leadership Program which he founded, the Legislative Mentorship Initiative. On that same occasion, we jointly commissioned the CoSPAL Secretariat, now housed in the state-of-the-art complex at the heart of Abuja. This is one of the decisions we took at the second conference hosted in Ghana. The unveiling of that office complex stands as a testament to what collective resolve can deliver. However, this feat would not have been possible without the extraordinary support and institutional backing provided through the Office of the Speaker of the House of Representatives of Nigeria, Right Honorable Abbas Tajuddin. He is present here. He has been a steadfast champion of CoSPAL in Nigeria, ensuring full compliance with every component of the host country agreement. We are very thankful for his leadership and the generosity of the Nigerian House of Representatives for providing a befitting secretariat that reflects the dignity, ambition, and strategic importance of this institution, and for equipping the secretariat with an enabling environment to do its work, very important work, successfully. Your Excellencies, we gather at a moment of extraordinary complexity in global affairs. Power relations are being reconfigured. Geopolitical competition has intensified. Ideologies that challenge the very foundations of collective action and multilateral cooperation are being propagated and promoted without a shred of shame. Conflicts have been multiplied. Global supply chains have become more fragile, and the consensus that once underpinned international cooperation has been significantly eroded. The world is unsettled, and the thread of diplomatic cooperation that once anchored the international order has snapped. Africa, too, stands at a crossroads. Our continent confronts a wide array of transnational pressures, such as rapid population growth, rising youth unemployment, food and energy insecurity, climate-induced stress, a volatile security environment, and the recurrent challenge of unconstitutional changes of government. These pressures test the resilience of our democratic institutions and the stability of our societies. Yet, they also sharpen our clarity of purpose, and that purpose is to build stronger nations, more responsive legislatures, and a more united continent. That is precisely why the theme for this year's assembly, legislative leadership and parliamentary diplomacy in a challenging and changing global order, is not only timely, but also vital. Considering these realities, we, the African parliamentary leaders, can no longer confine our influence to the walls of our chambers and parliaments and our borders. We must step forward as strategic actors in shaping the direction of our continent and contribute meaningfully to the architecture of global governance. No country is an island, and we cannot afford to be insular in a highly interconnected global political economy. In today's world, parliamentary diplomacy has evolved into a central pillar of international engagement. Our legislatures have the capacity to de-escalate, de-escalate tensions, drive stability, deepen democratic norms, promote accountability, and safeguard national and regional sovereignty. Parliaments are not only law-making bodies. Parliaments are institutions of peace, institutions of development, accountability, and global partnership. Your esteemed excellencies, the imperative for collective action explains why, over the next 3 days, this assembly will address 4 strategic issues that are central to the future of our continent and the role of legislative leadership. These issues are for us to look at the role of legislative leadership in understanding the shifting global landscape and assessing its implications for governance, democracy, and the development across Africa. And 2, for enhancing the role of legislative leaders through parliamentary diplomacy, with particular attention to conflict resolution, stabilization efforts, and enhanced multilateral cooperation. And the 3rd pillar is for strengthening the capacity of parliaments to address emerging and complex threats such as terrorism, organized crime, fiscal mismanagement, climate insecurity, public trust deficits, and the need for greater inclusion of women, young people, and the marginalized in political leadership. And the 4th point is deepening South-South cooperation, Pan-African solidarity, peer learning, and accountability, recognizing that our collective progress is inseparable from the unity of our continent. Our work here in the beautiful city of Rabat will culminate in several important outcomes. We expect to adopt the Rabat Declaration on Legislative Leadership in a changing global order, which will articulate our shared vision for Africa's democratic future and reaffirm our commitment to regional integration, peace, and constructive global engagement. Equally significant will be our deliberations on the institutional strengthening of CoSPAL. I therefore urge you all, my esteemed colleagues, to support our collective ambition and contribute meaningfully to the deliberations. A strong secretariat is the backbone of an effective institution. A formidable secretariat is non-negotiable if CoSPAL is to evolve into premier platform for African legislative leadership and parliamentary diplomacy. Therefore, the decisions we take here will directly influence the impact and credibility of CoSPAL in the years ahead. Your Excellencies, friends of the continent, Africa stands at the threshold of immense opportunity. Our demographic dynamism our natural endowments, our growing technological capability, and our rising geostrategic value, especially Morocco, give us unprecedented leverage. But to seize this moment, we must strengthen the institutions that safeguard our democracies, uphold the rule of law, and embody the sovereign will of our people. Our legislators must therefore collectively be more engaged, more assertive, and more visionary driven. As legislative leaders, we must lead from the front lines of fostering change and impact. This third assembly is a clarion call to action. It is an affirmation that the future of Africa will be shaped not only by the executive or multilateral institutions, but by strong, independent, collaborative, and forward-looking parliamentary leaders who deliver effective legislative leadership and impactful parliamentary diplomacy. Together, we can advance democratic governance, enhance stability, promote sustainable development, and contribute to a more just and inclusive world order. Let us therefore approach our work with openness, courage, and a shared commitment to the Africa we want. An Africa that is peaceful, prosperous, democratic, resilient, and influential. Your Excellencies, I want to extend my sincere appreciation to you all for braving the storms of financial droughts, tight work schedules, and domestic political pressures to attend this landmark event. We are especially grateful for the generosity of His Royal Majesty King Mohammed VI, the parliaments, and the good people of Morocco, our host. Your dedication to the cause of our continent and its people must be extolled to the high heavens. Since the era of independence, our various nations has experienced disunity that has been the bane of our continent. If all 52 African legislative leaders sang the CoSPAL anthem with a thunderous voice, our message would go beyond the ends of the world to the high heavens. But alas, only a fifth of us have formed the choir that must chorus the tune of continental legislative unity. So let me, in summing up, seize this opportunity to make a passionate appeal to our colleague legislative speakers and presidents who are still sitting on the sidelines, watching the birthing and nursing processes of CoSPAL. In our African traditions, a baby belongs to the entire clan. All African democratic nations must embrace this baby called CoSPAL and nourish it on the milk of budgetary allocations to grow into a giant, influential global voice of reason that provides legislative diplomacy and oversight across the world. I have no doubt that by the time CoSPAL celebrates its 5th anniversary, 3/4 of our continent's democratic states would have activated their membership and become lead advocates of continental legislative unity. It is based on this great optimism and with a deep sense of responsibility that I hereby declare the Third General Assembly of the Conference of Speakers and Presidents of African Legislatures officially opened. May God bless CoSPAL, bless African legislative unity, and guide our deliberations over these 3 days. I wish all participants a productive and inspiring conference. I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Right Honorable Speaker, for that visionary address. Indeed, after listening to your remarks, I am very hopeful about the deliberations that we will have at this General Assembly. And as we move forward, this opening address has shown us that we are set for continental progress as we go ahead in the Conference of Speakers and Presidents of African Legislatures' Third General Assembly. Now, before we move on to the next thing, please allow me to recognize the presence of somebody very indeed special in our midst, a man that has worked tirelessly to bring us here in Morocco today in Rabat, a man that has been entrusted with the vision of the Conference of Speakers and Presidents of African Legislators, the Secretary General of the Conference of Speakers and Presidents of African Legislators, Ambassador Dapo Oyewole. Your Excellencies, as we move forward to welcome us and further set the tone for today's engagements, I have the distinguished honor and privilege to invite Right Honorable Rachid Talbi El Alami, the Speaker of the House of Representatives of the Kingdom of Morocco, our chief host, to welcome us and deliver the welcome remarks. Please let's welcome him.
In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, peace and prayer be upon God's messenger, his kith and kin. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, peace and prayer be upon God's messenger, his kith and kin. Honorable Chair of the Conference of Speakers and Presidents of African Legislatures and esteemed colleague, Mr. Alban Bagben. Distinguished fellow speakers of national legislative institutions in sister African states, esteemed parliamentarians, the heads and members of different delegations, ladies and gentlemen. The House of Representatives of the Kingdom of Morocco has the honor of once again hosting a high-level African parliamentary event and receiving the speakers and members of the national parliaments of sister African states, members of the Conference of Speakers and Presidents of African Legislatures amidst a regional, continental, and international juncture where we most need dialogue, listening, and positive interaction. I would first like to welcome you again to the land of the Kingdom of Morocco, with the hope that the Third General Assembly of the CoSPAL would serve as an essential step in the path towards anchoring the position of our body as a force of proposition and a platform for collective reflection on the reality and future of our continent within the scope of complementarity and synergy with the works and initiatives of the other multilateral African parliamentary organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, regardless of the difference in our backgrounds, we surely agree on the questions and problems that concern our continent, its people and institutions. We also agree on the diagnosis of the common challenges that our continent is facing, which is another proof of the force and strength that unifies us and what should unite us. Ladies and gentlemen, Nobody can deny that Africa is nowadays the continent that bears the burden of the largest number of conflicts, crises, and problematics. In this respect, numerous countries of the continent face senseless terrorism that wears atrocious faces in the African context, as it is devastating and pushes millions of people to seek asylum and displacement, interrupts development, empties schools, and deprives entire generations of the right to education, and pushes them towards systematic ignorance, undermines democracy and the state of institutions, deprives its victims from communicating with the world, and tears up societies. Terrorism gets more dangerous in the African context when it joins forces with separatism to dismantle countries, undermine their territorial integrity, and render instability a given sustainable standard. Allow me, honorable colleagues, to call upon you today to act firmly and condemn the alliance of terrorism, separatism, and all sorts of transnational organized crime, and to take unyielding stances against its plotters, sponsors, and executors. It's a challenge of the collective security of the countries and people of this continent and their stability, which are key factors and imperative requirements for any development or progress. Ladies and gentlemen, in another matter, it's strangely ironic that our continent is the primary victim of the repercussions of climate imbalances, including desertification, forest destruction, and severe floods, while scientific facts mention that it contributes by less than 4% to the total greenhouse gas emissions caused by human activities. Indeed, I do not need to recall the consequences of these factors on the stability of inhabitants, sources of living, and quality of life. Due to these factors and other ones, our countries face the phenomenon of migration, and African migration is primarily on an intra-African phenomenon, as His Majesty King Mohammed VI, the African Union's leader in migration, has added that 4 out of each 5 migrants stay in the continent. This conclusion presents to us with the responsibility of refuting the allegations that tarnish African migration and redressing the misinterpretations regarding it. On another note, our continent faces deeper strategic challenges, such as ensuring its food security at a time where millions of Africans suffer from extreme famine and malnutrition. Once again, we find ourselves before a curious paradox. Our continent encloses more than 60% of the arable lands of the world and abundant water resources. In the meantime, the countries of the continent spend more than $100 billion annually to import 80% of primary food materials they need, which causes dependency on foreign countries and puts a heavy burden on the budget of these countries in a way that deprives African citizens of social services and equipment that could have been funded from the import costs. As our continent enjoys tremendous traditional and renewable sources for producing energy and providing it for Africans by priority, half of the inhabitants of the continent do not have access to electric power, with the repercussions of that on the quality of life, schooling, and the use of information and communication technologies. In the same regard, the challenges of providing social services like education and training, health and social care, infrastructure like roads, railway, transport, and urban planning remain one of the major problems that face the continent, hinder development, and stand as an obstacle between millions of Africans and their fundamental rights and services. In the face of these challenges and shortcomings, we must rehash the following questions. What are the roots of these problems? Particularly, how do they exist and what can be created from our position as national parliaments and elite to transform these challenges into success opportunities? Seeking a response to these two questions, we must first recall that our continent possesses enormous surface and an underground capacity and resources, unutilized lands, fresh waters that get wasted in the sea, minerals that are today strategic in the modern and future industries and technologies, as well as oceans and seas that contain abundant, valuable resources and may serve as an area for establishing tourism projects and opening the channels of transport and communication between the countries of the continent and the world. These capacities position our continent today as the core of intense international competition by various economic powers, which proves that our continent, thanks to its enormous resources and location, falls at the heart of international geopolitics and presents itself as the continent of the future. Our responsibility today as Africans is to transform these capacities into wealth by implementing structural projects. Ladies and gentlemen, to flip the script, meaning to transform capacities into wealth and to change the years of wasted development into progress opportunities, our continent certainly needs collective work. Achieving this noble objective requires a collective political will and transition from the management of crises to resolving and preventing them. We must particularly eradicate the rhetoric and strategies of separatism and interference in the domestic affairs of other countries and respect the rules that form the cornerstone of the world order and international relations, namely sovereignty and territorial integrity of states. We are all aware that Africa does not lack projects, conceptions, or initiatives. It rather needs practical execution. For example, the African Continental Free Trade Area is a consensual legal framework that can, if executed properly, launch major regional and continental dynamics in the economy and services as well. Although regional problems in the continent seem auspicious when it comes to exchanges, the promising and noble initiatives launched by His Majesty King Mohammed VI, may God assist him, such as the Atlantic African States Process and the Atlantic Initiative that aims to enable landlocked Sahel countries to access to the Atlantic Ocean, and the Atlantic Gas Pipeline Project, can change the face of the continent, equip it with strategic infrastructure, facilitate its link with the external world, and connect its countries on the path towards the aspired shared African prosperity. These initiatives, the AFCFTA and the regional communities of the continent, offer noble projects that can change the face of Africa, implement the South-South partnership, and enable the slogan of Africa for Africans, an Africa that opens its arms to the world, preserves the sovereignty of its countries, and utilizes its resources to achieve progress and happiness for its people. We must realize that we are in the presence of young African generations that witness the prosperity achieved outside of the continent in the north, south, and west, and aspire to achieve similar results in their countries and transform borders into exchange areas and channels of communication and shared prosperity that provides job opportunities and dignifying wages. Honorable colleagues, we indeed agree that Africa needs its sons and that we must consider the demographic growth and the young population pyramid in the continent as an opportunity, development tools, productive instruments, and thoughtful minds as well as creative talents. In a world marked by fragmentation, a turbulent multi-axis global order, and a disconcerted globalization, our continent has the chance to rise and develop. However, this chance requires the condition of unity and the investment in resources of the continent in favor of its countries and people. Poverty, weak human development indicators, and food and energy dependency are not an irreversible destiny, and Africa had succeeded in emancipating from colonialism, gifted humanity with abundant fruits and culture, science and wealth, and taught humanity the virtues of patience and assiduity. And this can surely achieve its renaissance today with unity and sincere collective work. International experiences present us with several lessons of unity and the way in which the factories of weaponry devoted to wars and conflicts were transformed into factories that manufacture goods that benefit humans, establish transnational infrastructure, build peace, and create hope, life, and coexistence. Indeed, continuing to anchor democracy and the state of institutions, all while evoking our history, institutional traditions, and African culture remains one of the main steps on this path that we should walk united and not dispersed. We must also address the world as African Parliament with one message that revolves around the interests of Africa and justice for the continent in all international matters. As parliaments, we surely have more room to maneuver and advocate this horizon. Therefore, we must utilize these 2 upcoming days of proceedings to capitalize on the documents we had adopted during similar gatherings and move from diagnosis and agreement on ideas to their implementation on the ground from our position and based on our prerogatives as legislative institutions. I thank you for your keen listening and welcome again to your second country, the Kingdom of Morocco.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for your warm welcome and for your insightful remarks. Good morning once again, Your Excellencies. I'm going to try this. Bon dia, Suas, Excellencies. Bonjour, Your Excellencies. Sabah al-Khair, Your Excellencies. I hope I have everybody covered. As we go on, we wish this Third General Assembly, Assalamu alaikum. And next up, we will receive goodwill message from Honorable Lassen Haddad, who is the Vice President of the House of Councillors of the Kingdom of Morocco. Welcome, Your Excellency.
Praise be to God, and peace and blessings be upon the noblest of messengers, our Prophet Muhammad, and upon all his companions. Mr. Rashid Talbi Al-Alami, Speaker of the House of Representatives of the Kingdom of Morocco, Mr. Alban Soumana Kingsford Bagben, Speaker of the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana and President of the Conference of Speakers and African Legislatures, His Excellency Jami, the CoSPAL founder, His Excellency Ambassador Dabo Oilu, the Secretary General of the Conference of Speakers of African Legislatures, honorable speakers of African parliaments and legislative assemblies, honorable members of parliament, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to speak on behalf of Mr. Mohammed Ould Rashid, Speaker of the House of Councillors, at the opening of the third session of the General Assembly of the Conference of Speakers of African Parliaments and Legislatures, CoSPAL. This organization has become a continental parliamentary forum embodying our collective will to enhance parliamentary cooperation among our countries, strengthen coordination and consultation, and build unified visions regarding the rapid transformations taking place in our regional and international environment. At the outset, I would like to welcome you in my turn to your second country, the Kingdom of Morocco, which has become a vital bridge between the countries and peoples of the continent. Morocco embraces a shared African ambition and reflects a renewable political institutional dynamism, particularly as it prepares in just a few days to host the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations. This continental sporting event embodies at its core the image and dynamism of a rising united Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, the current international context, marked by profound transformations and the decline in the certainties that have governed international relations for decades, along with widening circles of tension and polarization, and an increase in cross-border crisis, reveals a world testing the ability of states and institutions to respond to unprecedented challenges. This complex global landscape calls upon us to consider Africa's position within these transformations and to assess the readiness of its legislative institutions to formulate collective responses that safeguard sovereignty and support development. In light of these changes, the need arises for continental frameworks that strengthen the strategic role of African parliaments in keeping pace with and guiding these transformations and in translating the shared will of our peoples into effective policies and legislation that support stability and adopt unified approaches to confronting challenges. Therefore, the role of African parliaments today transcends traditional functions, rising to the level of exercising genuine leadership. Legislative leadership that shapes smart continental policies that translate development priorities and transform challenges into opportunities. A leading diplomacy that preserves peace and protects the higher interests of states and peoples and ensures an influential presence for the voice of Africa in international forums. Ladies and gentlemen, speaking of parliamentary leadership evokes the profound visionary outlook expressed by His Majesty King Mohammed VI. May God grant him victory, in his message to the African Union Summit in Kigali, when he affirmed that Africa is no longer merely a subject of international relations, but has become a continent asserting its presence and assuming its responsibilities. This royal directive embodies a strategic vision for Africa's place in the new international order and calls upon its institutions to seize the initiative and move from being passive recipients of changes to active participants in shaping them. Hence, the proceedings of our conference on legislative leadership and parliamentary diplomacy in a changing global order acquire particular importance at this international juncture, because Africa will only solidify its position by developing the roles of its legislative institutions and adopting visions and mechanisms capable of anticipating changes rather than merely reacting to them. However, the accelerating pace of time presents our parliaments with a dual challenge: the need for rapid response to crisis on the one hand, and the demands of in-depth democratic debate and policy making based on sound rational foundations on the other. This legislative leadership advocated by our conference is not merely a slogan, but a path based on strengthening institutional capacities, supporting of the work of committees, enhancing technical expertise, providing data, developing oversight and accountability mechanisms, and establishing regular and effective continental parliamentary cooperation. Within this framework, the conference's conceptual note acquires its particular value, given its insightful analysis of the structural challenges facing our continent and its systematic organization of discussion topics, which helps to deepen the vision and guide the dialogue towards practical and meaningful outcomes. Undoubtedly, the scheduled sessions, from securing Africa's economy and strengthening its sovereignty to building strong and inclusive institutions and managing the demographic boom, will provide fertile ground for enriching our collective intelligence with practical ideas and interests intersecting visions. This will be capable of bolstering our shared ambition for a proactive Africa and opening legislative and diplomatic avenues through which we can address these vital challenges effectively and boldly. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to briefly address the Moroccan experience not as a ready-made model, but as a contribution to the intra-African dialogue on institutional reform, legislative leadership, and parliamentary diplomacy. Under the wise leadership of His Majesty King Mohammed VI, may God grant him victory, Morocco has adopted a reform path based on consolidating the rule of law and strengthening democratic governance through a gradual and realistic approach that balances responding to immediate challenges with strategic reforms. This approach has been embodied in the development of oversight mechanisms and the evaluation of public policies, the implementation of advanced regionalization, and the adoption of framework of regulatory laws in vital sectors, thus enriching the African dialogue on legislative leadership. In parallel, Morocco has embraced a responsible parliamentary diplomacy based on respect for sovereignty, the promotion of peace, and the building of partnerships founded on cooperation and solidarity. It has made its African depth and South-South cooperation a strategic choice for shared development. Within this vision, major royal initiatives stand out as milestones in the continent's trajectory, most notably the Atlantic Africa Initiative and the Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline project, among other projects that transcend narrow borders and open strategic horizons for economic integration, energy, and investment. In embodying this lofty royal vision, the House of Councillors has accumulated considerable experience in parliamentary diplomacy, making it an active participant in continental and international forums, contributing to the defense of Africa's priorities, bridging viewpoints, and formulating joint initiatives. The House has worked to develop economic parliamentary diplomacy,
التنسيق والحوار والمساهمة.
Conviction that the continent's future is linked to the capacity strengthen cooperation networks with African parliaments, support coordination and dialogue, and contribute to reports and initiatives related to climate, migration, and peace and security. Today, it plays an institutional role that reflects Morocco's conviction with the continent's future is linked to the capacity of its institutions for effective solidarity, cooperation, and shared development. Its parliaments, if provided with vision, capabilities, and solidarity, are capable of contributing to shaping a more just global order that respects the voice of the people. Let us make this conference a platform for deepening shared reflections, strengthening mechanisms for parliamentary cooperation, and developing working tools that enable our legislative institutions to keep pace with international transformations and support efforts aimed at building stable development paths within the continent. Thank you, and I wish this conference every success, hoping that our deliberations will be fruitful for our peoples and will strengthen the path of joint African development. Peace, mercy, and blessings of God be upon you.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for those very moving and also very insightful goodwill messages. We appreciate you, and we're very hopeful for everything that is to come in this General Assembly. Distinguished leaders of Parliament, Your Excellencies, of our great continent, Africa, it is now time to hear from the visionary statesman whose commitment to African parliamentary collaboration, coordination, and cooperation laid the foundation of the Conference of Speakers and Presidents of African Parliaments, which has brought us here today. He is the founding speaker of CoSPAL. He is the inaugural chairman of CoSPAL, the Speaker of the 9th House of Representatives, and the Chief of Staff to the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Let's welcome for his special remarks, Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, on whose vision we are here today. Welcome, sir.
The Speaker, Parliament of Ghana, and Chairman, Conference of Speakers and Presidents of African Legislatures, Right Honorable Bagwin, the Speakers and Heads of Parliament, especially our host Speaker, thank you for your warmth and hospitality. The Secretary General CoSPAL, Ambassador Bayo Dakwa Oyewole, parliamentarians, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to single out and recognize also the Speaker of my parliament, Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas. It is indeed an honor for me to join you at this third General Assembly of the Conference of Speakers and Presidents of African Legislature, CoSPAL, an institution that continues to embody the collective will, responsibility, and aspirations of African legislative leadership. Standing here today, I am reminded of how far we have come and how resolute this community has worked to strengthen the voice, the visibility, and the strategic relevance of African parliaments in a rapidly changing world. Now, when we conceived the idea of CoSPAL at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, uncertainty defined the global order. Across the world, institutions were strained, economies were disrupted, and governance systems were tested in unprecedented ways. At that moment, we recognized that Africa did not merely need stronger parliaments. It needed a coordinated platform of legislative leaders capable of shaping regional and global conversations. And so CoSPAL was born as a pan-African legislative mechanism for deliberation, coordination, cooperation, and unified action among legislative leaders towards addressing our own challenges and taking our destinies into our own hands. I remain deeply grateful that this vision has not only endured, but it has flourished. Allow me, therefore, to pay special tribute to my brother and my friend, Right Honorable Alban Sumana Kingsford Bagbin, the Speaker of the Parliament of Ghana and Chairman of CoSPAL. His exceptional leadership, strategic foresight, and unfailing commitment have carried this institution into a new phase of maturity. I also recognize the tireless work and dedication of our Secretary General, Ambassador Dakpo Oyewole, who has been there from the very inception of what initially was called COSAP, as the pioneer chair of its technical working group. Now serving as the Secretary General, he and his team have ensured the Secretariat is functional and effective. They have also mobilized strategic partnerships, developed impressive programs, and enhanced CoSPAL's representation and visibility across the continent and beyond. I most sincerely acknowledge my dear brother, friend, and successor, Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, PhD, GCON, Speaker of the House of Representatives of Nigeria, whose support in the establishment of the Secretariat has been nothing short of extraordinary. I was particularly delighted to join the commissioning of the CoSPAL Secretariat, which was established with his leadership and support in Abuja on 29th of November 2025. This is indeed a major milestone for CoSPAL and for Africa, and we sincerely thank the Speaker of Nigeria for his leadership and generosity in ensuring CoSPAL has a world-class secretariat in which to do its work and pursue its ambitions. Now, this year's theme, legislative leadership and parliamentary diplomacy in a changing global order, speaks directly to the urgency of our time. The world is experiencing a recalibration of power relations, intensified geopolitical rivalries, weakening multilateralism, and emerging threats to peace, democracy, and economic stability. In parallel, African nations face a complex landscape characterized by rising unemployment, demographic pressures, climate-induced insecurity, unconstitutional change of governments, debt vulnerabilities, and widening inequality. The implications of these are clear. Africa cannot afford passive or inward-looking legislative institutions. Our parliaments must be active architects of solutions, shaping policy, championing accountability, strengthening democracy, and responding decisively to a rapidly evolving world, and not mere observers of continental and global transformations. In this regard, CoSPAL has a unique role. It provides the platform through which Africa's legislative leadership can coordinate continental positions, harmonize legislative responses, and reinforce Pan-African solidarity at a time when global alliances are rapidly shifting. Therefore, beyond the discussions, beyond the deliberations, and beyond resolutions of this assembly, something deeper is being reaffirmed, that Africa's legislative leaders are ready to step forward, assume greater responsibility, exhibit strategic influence, and shape the future of governance on our continent and perhaps beyond. So as we look ahead, let us remain bold in purpose, steadfast in unity, and visionary in building a stronger, more secure, and more prosperous Africa. Let us harness the power of parliamentary diplomacy, not as a tool of convenience, but as a strategic instrument for conflict prevention, economic cooperation, and democratic advancement. And above all, let us continue to deepen CoSPAL as a platform that brings Africa's legislative leadership closer, stronger, and more influential. I thank and applaud the Kingdom of Morocco and the Parliament for the warm hospitality and exceptional collaboration with CoSPAL Secretariat in hosting this third General Assembly. I thank all the delegations here present for your leadership and commitment and for keeping the CoSPAL dream alive, a dream of Africa's legislative leaders working together for Africa's development. May our deliberations be fruitful, may our decisions be transformative, and may our united efforts move Africa closer to the peaceful, prosperous, and dignified future our people deserve. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, for those very distinguished, visionary, and moving remarks. Your Excellencies, distinguished speakers, and presidents of African parliaments and legislators, let us now turn to a special goodwill message from the leader of one of the key parliamentary institutions that is shaping interparliamentary relations all across the globe. We have a pre-recorded goodwill message from His Excellency Mr. Martin Chungong, who is the Secretary General of the Interparliamentary Union. So please, let's turn our attentions to the screen as we now watch the pre-recorded goodwill message.
Right Honorable Speaker Bagbin, Right Honorable Speaker El Alami, Your Excellency Ambassador Oyewole, Honorable Presidents and Speakers of African Parliaments, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor to address the third Annual General Assembly of the Conference of Speakers and Presidents of African Legislatures, CoSPAL, here in the Kingdom of Morocco. I thank you for inviting me to this important meeting, which I regret not being able to attend in person. The founding of CoSPAL in 2022 was an important milestone, and I am pleased to see its growing membership. I look forward to developing an impactful partnership between our organizations, aiming to strengthen institutions and support peace and prosperity on the African continent. The theme of the General Assembly, Leadership and Parliamentary Diplomacy in a Changing Global Order, is timely. The challenges and the opportunities facing the African continent are tremendous, and good governance and strong, responsible leadership will be decisive in shaping the continent's future. This is a moment to reflect on how to strengthen parliamentary cooperation, advance democratic governance, and amplify Africa's legislative voice in shaping global and regional priorities. Having this work led by African legislators, by Africans and for Africans, echoes my hope for the continent to be the architect of its own future. Strengthening African parliaments is a priority for the IPU and for me personally. At the 145th IPU Assembly in Kigali in 2022, I called on our member parliaments to find innovative solutions to support peace, sustainable development, and alternatives to military responses to instability. I stressed the importance of multilateralism, solidarity, and support for parliaments striving for democracy and the rule of law, since this fosters good governance, which is people-centered. I also encouraged the IPU's governing bodies to consider partnering with African institutions to identify pathways for addressing instability on the continent. I must say we have our job cut out for us. Judging from the recent developments in Guinea-Bissau, where the military have taken control of the country and in the process subverted an ongoing electoral process. The IPU strongly condemns this military takeover, which sets the continent back on the path to democracy. The IPU will not relent in its efforts to help parliaments, especially in Africa, as they work to live up to the expectations of their people. The Interparliamentary Union focuses on helping parliaments build capacity and supports peace processes. This year, I have undertaken missions to Gabon, Niger, the DRC, and Rwanda, and the IPU recently provided assistance to the parliaments of Burundi, Gabon, Burkina Faso, Guinea, Chad, and now Niger. Our support includes facilitating peer-to-peer exchanges, access to expertise and training, including induction sessions for new members of parliament, contributing to the drafting of new constitutions, aiding in budget oversight, creating legal frameworks for inclusive decision-making, citizen engagement during crises, reviewing internal parliamentary structures, and supporting new legislatures as well as parliaments in transition. We welcome the efforts of African presidents and speakers of parliament, and I look forward to stronger cooperation. I wish you a successful conference and look forward to hearing the outcomes and to seeing many of you at the 152nd IPU Assembly in Istanbul in April 2026. Thank you.
Our many thanks to the Secretary General of the IPU in absentia for his very moving goodwill message. Your Excellencies, distinguished speakers, honorable delegates, ladies and gentlemen present here, the next session indeed provides an intellectual roadmap for this third General Assembly. And to guide us through the plan for the next few days, we are privileged to have a leader who sits at the intersection of parliamentary diplomacy, institutional development, and Africa's governance and legislative infrastructure. As the Secretary General of the Conference of Speakers and President of African Legislatures, Ambassador Dapo Oyewole has been instrumental in strengthening this institution and taking forward the vision, and also ensuring that our collective engagements translate into concrete legislative impact across the continent. And so it is my honor and distinguished pleasure to invite the Secretary General of the Conference of Speakers and President of African Legislators, Ambassador Dapo Oyewole, to present the program overview for the Third General Assembly of CoSPAL.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. The distinguished Chairman of CoSPAL, Right Honorable Alban Sumana Kingsford Babing, the Speaker of the Parliament of Ghana, and of course, the Chairman of CoSPAL, the founding Speaker and inaugural Chairman of CoSPAL, Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, the 9th Speaker of the House of Representatives, the inaugural Chairman of CoSPAL, and the Chief of Staff to the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila. It's nice to have you here, sir. Thank you for flying all the way from Nigeria to honor our invitation. Our most gracious host, our most gracious and very generous host, Right Honorable Rashid Talbi El Amin, the Speaker of the House of Representatives of Morocco, and of course, the President of the House of Councillors, Right Honorable Mohamed Oud El Rashid. We are most thankful for your hospitality and for having us here. Honorable speakers and presidents of African legislators here present, a very, very good morning to you. We thank you very much for honoring the invitation. We also thank the members of the diplomatic community who are here, as well as our erudite resource persons who will be taking us through some really rigorous intellectual calisthenics during the course of the day. And of course, the members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed an honor and a privilege to present an overview of the program of the Third General Assembly of the Conference of Speakers and Presidents of African Legislators, CoSPAL. But let me start by expressing our profound and sincere gratitude to the Kingdom, the Parliament, and the great people of Morocco for choosing to host this very important gathering for the very first time in North Africa. This is a milestone for CoSPAL, and we're delighted and honored that you were able to host us, and we thank you for your generosity on behalf of everyone here. Please, I think they deserve a round of applause. It has been a fantastic experience working with your team, the Secretary General and his team, and it is through collaborations like this that the unity of our continent is affirmed in terms of working together and bringing together our legislative leaders. My task today is fairly simple. It is to take us through what to expect over the next 2 days. Our agenda has been carefully designed to achieve 3 central objectives. 1, to reaffirm CoSPAL's collective vision of strengthening legislative leadership and parliamentary diplomacy across the continent, something that could not be more crucial at any time, but in these challenging times that we face globally. The second is to deepen African interparliamentary collaboration at the very highest level in response to emerging global and regional dynamics that we see. Together, we have to stand as we face some of the challenges before us. And some of those challenges will be discussed later on today, and that is the third objective, to facilitate critical conversations on the key challenges, but as well as opportunities facing our continent and how they can be tackled and effectively addressed through legislative leadership of you eminent speakers and presidents of African legislators here gathered. I think you will agree with me that the day has started on a very inspiring note from the comments and the speeches that we've heard from our legislative leaders here on the high table. They have set the tone, and it's a tone that emphasizes the importance of unity, of cooperation and collaboration, and unity as well as solidarity between Africa's legislative leaders if we are to be able to stand strong and emerge victorious as we face a lot of headwinds. Those headwinds are some of the things we want to discuss in the earlier part of today. And to start our discussion, we have the honor of having a very eminent and distinguished speaker, Professor Kingsley Moghalu, who is the founder of the Institute for Governance and Economic Transformation. He was also the Deputy Central Bank Governor of Nigeria and former, and I believe founding Vice Chancellor of the African School of Governance. He is also a professor at Tufts University and has authored many books on diplomacy, on governance, on development, and particularly focusing on how to put Africa forward in every step and in every way. He will be taking us through a discussion on looking at securing Africa's economy for the future, particularly focusing on the role of legislative leadership. Democracies survive because they have institutions. So our second session will look at building institutions for transformative impact. And we have none other than Mr. Abrahamane Diko, the Director of Programs and Impact of the African Capacity Building Foundation, which is based in Zimbabwe. He will take us through how, through legislative leadership, we can help to strengthen inclusive, accountable, and resilient institutions across our continent. Later on in the day, she's still probably airborne right now, we have flying over to join us the United Nations Development Program's resident representative in Nigeria, a lady of huge repute and of Ghanaian descent, Mrs. Elsie Atafwa. She will take us through one of the key issues that is on everybody's mind, looking at Africa on the global stage, the issues, the challenges, and the development imperatives. As you know only too well, UNDP sits at the intersection between governance and development across Africa and across the world. Her session will explore Africa's global posture, the constraints, the opportunities, and the strategic imperatives before us. In one of the speeches, I believe it was particularly the speaker, the honorable speaker from our host country, Morocco, he talked about the importance of tackling insecurity. Well, today we also have a session that will focus on tackling insecurity and terrorism through effective legislation. This is a challenge that we're all facing across the continent, one which threatens to stop our growth and our development, but I know only too well that you legislative leaders here are up to the task in ensuring that our development and our growth shall not be truncated. This session will be led by Mr. Ismail Chekori, the Director of Global Issues at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and African Cooperation, and as well as Moroccan expatriates from here in the Kingdom of Morocco. He will help to explore legislative frameworks necessary for combating insecurity and strengthening regional stability. We've talked a lot about parliamentary diplomacy, one of the core mandates of CoSPAL. So there will be a session on leveraging parliamentary diplomacy to address emerging geopolitical and development challenges. And we have none other than Dr. Rashid Rahman, the Executive Director of the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs. He is a renowned scholar, written extensively, and is called upon by governments from across the world to help to strengthen legislative leadership and institutions. Well, we have him here, thanks to our chairman of CoSPAL, who insisted that he had to be here to share some of his insights on how we can leverage parliamentary diplomacy, particularly as we're facing quite a number of challenges within our continent as well as globally. We live, ladies and gentlemen, in a knowledge economy, one that is based on data. And therefore, Dr. Debisi Araba, the Managing Director of Academia 2063, will be taking us through a session called The Science That We Need for the Africa We Want, a legislative imperative. How do we harness evidence-based policy, the tools that are available through science to help you, our legislative leaders, do your work better with more impact and help us to achieve our goals under the African Union Agenda 2063. And finally, perhaps some may say we're saving the best for the last, depends on your opinion. We will also have a woman who has been championing the importance of inclusive governance across Africa and even across the world, particularly focusing on the role of women in political life and political representation. We will have Mrs. Ibijoke Faborode, the founder and the CEO of an organization called Elect Her, to take us through the state of women in African parliaments, which is a result of a project between CoSPAL and Elect Her that looks at not just the challenges, but the opportunities before us when we're able to harness the role and the strength and the wisdom and of course, the inclusion of women in African parliaments, particularly also in public service across the continent. And that is how we will wrap up. I know you're perhaps concerned that this is a lot. The idea is that they will speak very briefly, only just about 10 to 15 minutes, but the real conversation that we're hoping to have is from you, sharing your thoughts, sharing your insights, and helping us to see how we can build consensus and how we move forward, and of course, how we take our continent in the right direction. That will bring, of course, at some point later on in the day, there is a documentary which we would like you to see. It's a documentary that tells the story of CoSPAL, how it emerged from COVID-19, the many speakers that have from across Africa that have come together to build this, the different events that have been held in Africa and also outside, so you have a panoramic understanding of how this initiative started, how it has been built, and where it is going, and of course, to understand how you are a part of it and can help to keep it alive and going. I'm sure we will have that documentary played for your enjoyment, but also for your inspiration much later on in the day. And that will be the end of our day. We know many of you have been traveling. You need to rest, particularly because tomorrow we then move into the heart of the discussion, which is the general debate on the conference theme. Tomorrow we hope to hear from as many of you. We have circulated information that we hope that you will deliver 3-minute statements as part of the general debate, and every speaker and president of the Senate here represented will have the opportunity to take the floor and hold the gavel. And we want to hear your thoughts on these themes, and your thoughts as you reflect them is what will be also captured in what we have quite appropriately titled the Rabat Declaration, which will be a declaration that shows the consensus perspectives, opinions, and of course, the collective ambitions of all of you, our legislative leaders here gathered in the beautiful city of Rabat, Morocco. So that will be our communique, and of course, there shall be the vote of thanks. But for all your hard work that you'll be doing, we are glad to announce that again, our gracious and generous hosts have arranged a full day for you not just to see the chambers, not just the conference room, and not just the hotel, but to see the beauty and the majesty of this beautiful country. And they have curated a fantastic tour, which will take us through the rich cultural heritage and the historical knowledge that we need to understand Morocco, its people, and of course, you will also use that as a basis for understanding the great generosity that they have shown us by hosting us here today. Your Excellencies, this year's program is deliberately ambitious and balanced between intellectual rigor, but also political reflection. It also looks at institutional strengthening as well as strategic dialogue. And it is our hope and expectation that the conversations, the partnerships, the friendships, and the decisions that will emerge from this assembly will shape the next phase of continental parliamentary cooperation and reinforce the role of African legislative leadership in global affairs. We thank you very much for honoring our invitation, and of course, wish you very, very productive deliberations. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Dapo Oyewole, for those very, very well laid out plans. Indeed, we are excited about the program, and we cannot wait to dive in and experience what is to come. But before we go straight into it, I know that we might be a little tired, we might want to stretch our legs a little bit, and so now it's time for a short break. Delegates, Your Excellencies, speakers, President of Parliament, we would like to invite you all for a coffee break and group photographs. And so the way it will work is that we would kindly request that Your Excellencies in the front, the speakers and President of African Parliaments, kindly follow the protocol officers over there, you will be led to the place where we will take the group photographs. And then also towards that side, other delegates can then go for tea and coffee break. Immediately after the group photographs, the presidents and speakers of the parliament will then also take their group photos, and then we intend to be back here at exactly 11:30 to continue with the high-level dialogues. Thank you all so much, and I look forward to seeing you in 21 minutes.